Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Yes.
We are going to talk about what Justina described as how can you eat more calories and still lose weight is basically what we're talking about. And this is called reverse dieting. Now, is this an option? Can you eat more and still not gain weight? Well, um, we'll start off here. So, what is reverse dieting? It is a method to. Used in a few ways. It's used for people who have chronically undereaten, so who are in a caloric deficit, and who want to like regain some weight, or so sorry, who want to go back to a normal maintenance level. Let's say you drop from 80 kilos to 70 kilos, and you wanna like you've eaten not too many calories, but you want to go back to staying at that 70. Well, then you don't have to eat the same amount as you needed for 80 to 70. You can eat a little more and maintain your 70, and that is what you'll need to do. So you go back slightly. Uh, sorry. Um, it's also used if you're like if you want to make more progression, but you feel like you're hitting a plateau, then reverse dieting could also be used um, for recovery. Yeah, you go back to your maintenance mode, and there's a lot to say. I think the most important slide is definitely going to be this one, where I'll go over it in more detail. But important to know is that it's always used so you go back to eating a little more calories to give your metabolism a a short like transition time to like it readjusts to what is normal. Why is that? Because, and I'll go back to the fourth slide for this. This is how much you expend in a normal day, and what we expend is also that's what's called your metabolism. How much energy do you expend? So you have the base metabolic rate, your bottom rate, which is what you burn in rest. Then you've got your it's called thermic effective food, how much you burn by digesting foods. Then you've got your NEAT, your non-exercise activity thermogenesis. So basically walking, doing the dishes, other small gestures that you don't necessarily like. Sitting here right now, I am moving my hand a bit. Like that is in a way is also non-exercise activity thermogenesis. Um, and then there's the exercise activity thermogenesis, exercise. I think that's a pretty clear one. So this consists of all your metabolism and everything you burn. Now, what happens when we are too much in a caloric deficit is we tend to reduce mostly those top three. So, and you might not even notice this, but you're doing a little less activity. You're moving your hand a little less. You're not going for walks anymore. You're feeling tired, and in that way, you're trying to preserve energy by now doing small other things. Could also be digestion that goes down, thermic effective food even goes down, and exercise you have less of a will to go exercise. It's your body's way of trying to preserve itself because it's like, hey, I'm not getting in a lot of food, so I'm going to try and keep everything I have by not burning too much. So that's basically what happens when you diet too long. Now, what happens? What is the goal with reverse dieting? Instead of all of a sudden going straight back to a higher calorie rate, which means that all of a sudden your body's getting an extra 400 or 500. This is a really interesting graph. So when you do the yo-yo dieting, you go back to an increase in calories right away, but your body, your metabolic rates adjusts a little slower, and it how do I explain? Sorry, how do I explain this in a clear way? Um, it will store a lot as fat straight away because you're eating too much. Um, while if you do it shorter, sorry, over a longer period of time, your body will be more like, oh, okay, so this is the new normal. Okay, I'm not going to store this too much as fat, and it's basically a better way not to store all that extra energy as fat. So how do we go?
So
I'll just
basically,
explain.
is it then like if you go back?
too fast, then your body is like, oh my god, now I get all the food and I need to store it because I'm afraid that at one point I will again go back.
Mhm.
Is it
Yes,
like that?
exactly. Exactly that. Yes. Yes. And I think this graph will also help you a little more. So this is red one's weight, metabolic rate. This kind of should coincide a bit. Like if you see they how do I best explain? If you if you eat more calories than you but it's not perfect this graph. But anyway, sorry. What happens is that if you go too drastically, you'll see drastic changes here too, and over time, this line will start raising because your caloric intake goes down very fast. It goes up. That's what the crash diet does, and then um, the big refeed, the big crash, and you start eating more again. Uh, your metabolic rate will go up, but it won't go up by that much. It stays a little under here, while your calorie intake still goes a little higher. And you see here this difference makes that you gain some more weight. Now, then you go drop again, down again, and this here, your metabolic rate, your body is not fully adjusting yet, and it's doing more activity, but it doesn't fully have the time to really get in there. And then in the end, you keep gaining some weight. Um, is what is generally accepted as to being the thing with the yo-yo dieting. But what happens with the reverse dieting? So you have your normal cut, you go down here, and then by gradually increasing those calories over this dotted line, you slightly increase your metabolic rate with that. You start slowly doing more activity, doing more things, and your weight it will go up a little bit normally because um, especially if you go slightly over your maintenance, then you will still gain weight. That the laws of calories unfortunately cannot be broken, and you might think you're doing the same, but in reality, you're going to do more of those small hand movements. You're going to walk around more during the day. You're going to burn more calories in other ways that you didn't know. But unfortunately, those laws cannot be broken. Which doesn't mean it's not a useful thing, but because by increasing your metabolic rate, you are burning calories, and then you can eat some more, and then again you can, if that metabolic rate is higher, and if you would then reduce your calories again, then you're burning more and you're reducing those calories until a certain degree, right? If you go too hard, then again it will uh, you won't have that effect anymore, and your body will start saving energy again, and your metabolic, so your activity levels will go down again, so that will not work. But what I'm really trying to say is that it is a smart way to reinstate that normal rate, that maintenance level, instead of trying to like fully let go and then quickly gain those kilos back. Um, However, there are a few caveats with that. Um, it requires a really, really good knowledge of your calorie intake and usage. And I'm not talking about in the hundreds, I'm talking about like by 50 or something. You should know exactly how many you eat on every day and exactly how much you burn every day. Because if you want to do this properly, it means that you need to eat an excess of 50 or 100 extra calories for every few days. It's also very highly dependent on the person because not everybody adjusts to this as quickly as with your activity levels. It can depend on a lot of factors. How burned out of the diet are you? How is your job? How is your sleep? All those things. So it's highly dependent on the person. But you should know what your calorie intake is, and it should be a very constant one. If you want to do, that's another one. It needs to be a very constant level daily. Now you can't have 300, 400 day differences. So that's number one for a requirement for doing the reverse dieting. Second, obviously, lots of discipline. Then it also needs to be done with a slow increase of the non-exercise activity time. So something you probably don't notice, which makes it extra hard to measure, again, unfortunately. And then another big caveat here is that, unfortunately, all of this is not scientifically proven at all. Not researched either, but it hasn't been proven yet. It seems like this is a thing and it exists, and there is some how do you say it, anecdotal evidence, or there's some case studies that's have this, but mostly it's experienced by dietitians, and people say this seems to be a thing, but unfortunately there has not been any. And it's really hard to study this regardless, because how are you going to measure that non-exercise activity time? How are you going to do it? It can be done, but it's really, really, really tricky. So all of this that I'm saying today, unfortunately, is not scientifically proven yet, but it looks like it could help. There's a really, really interesting article about this. It's from on the website of Precision Nutrition, which is a nutrition course, an online nutrition course, but a very in-depth one for coaches. But I think they did a pretty good job explaining it in a relatively simple terms. So if you want, you can definitely read that. They also have a 10-minute video on it. So yeah. And that is most of what I wanted to say about reverse dieting. There isn't really much else to say, because it's a new thing. Unfortunately, I have to break the bubble to say that you can eat a little more and still lose weight, but you'll still be in a caloric deficit. Those laws still apply. And that could be by doing more activity, which is why for a lot of people, I highly, highly suggest having some activity in. I probably, to all of you, have at one point nagged about the fact that you should do some activity or some steps or whatever, because it's just that important. This is how you get that non-exercise activity time in. And as you see, the green is bigger than the red. That means that you can get more calories burned because of that than the red one. This really depends on the person too. This could be the opposite way, but just to give you an idea, you see that they are in similar magnitudes, right? This is because the NEAT can be done. It can be done for longer. Usually, it can be done more often because you need less recovery for it. And it fits your daily life a little better usually, and it's not as draining. So, and you do burn a lot of calories. Also, every minute you're walking is less of a chance to eat. While if you do a half-hour workout, you still have 23 hours and 30 minutes to eat. You can still eat while walking, but the chances are going to be a little lower. That is what I wanted to tell you guys about yo-yo dieting, reverse dieting mostly. I don't know if any of you have any questions on this.
So this is basically the way to go back to your normal non-caloric deficit way. This is the main way.
Back to a maintenance, yes. Yeah. However, again, these are the requirements. You need to have. You need to know all these calories to do. But you can try, obviously, by just slightly adding in an extra, like an apple or a tablespoon of peanut butter or something per that many days. But if you, definitely the thought behind this is, when you stop dieting, don't go all out crazy right at once unless you want to store it as fat right away. That is not, that's not the best idea, for sure.
All right.
I have a question maybe about because you said you still need to be in caloric deficit to lose weight, which, that's obvious. But then, like, you're reverse dieting for a certain period of time and you still lose weight, or you get like more toned because you were really in big deficit for a long period of time. So you start to get muscled or whatever. And then you just stay on the maintenance when you reach the goal, or?
Yeah, your goal is to go to your maintenance level.
Okay.
That is what reverse dieting should be about. So let's say you have to, let's make it very simple. You are eating 2,000 calories a day. And by that, your baseline level is 2,500 to stay at an even level. You're 500 under. What you want to do then is you gradually go from 2,000 to 2,050 to 2,100 to 2,150, 2,200, all those numbers. And in the very beginning, you could still be losing weight because 2,200 is still under 2,500. So you still will be losing some weight. But at one point you will catch up, and then you'll be at 2,500. And then... Can you still hear me?
Yeah, it was a bit weird. Very weird noise.
Did you hear most of what I said? I did hear something in my microphone as well.
I think most of it was just the last sentence that I didn't hear.
It was about, so when you go 2,150, 2,200, 2,300, those numbers just slightly go up. And then at one point you will be at maintenance level. Yeah, that's the most. But also important to know is that your what was your old starting maintenance weight is not your new maintenance weight anymore. Let's say you started at 80 kilos, and then your maintenance might have been 2,500. Now you lost weight, you got to 70 kilos. Your maintenance level is not 2,500 anymore. It's probably going to be somewhere in the middle, 2,200-ish, because you have less mass to maintain, which means you can eat less calories. And if you eat the same 2,500, you're going to go back to that 80 kilos, for example.
Makes sense.
Are there any other questions on this admittedly complicated topic?
It's clear to me.
Yeah. All right.
I didn't want to come up with complicated topic, but there was no poll or nobody suggested anything, and this is like you see it daily on Instagram, and I think
it's very misleading. People say that, and it's the starvation mode thing, and it is in a way it is a thing because you will just not do any more activity unconsciously, but it's not like what it is praised to be. As in, you can eat whatever you want and still lose weight, and you'll feel so much happier. And that's unfortunately not how it works, from what it looks like, at least.
What I see a lot on Instagram is intuitive eating. I see it in YouTube channels as well. Maybe that could be a next topic as well for a poll.
That is